I was supposed to be the obsessive villain in the story, the simp who would destroy himself for the female CEO. But the moment I found out that divorcing her would net me half of her fortune, I instantly switched from lovesick fool to full-time wealthy man. I couldn't even be bothered with stupid gestures like bringing her lunch anymore. While I was busy swiping her credit card and planning my future life of leisure, she had no idea that when I looked at her now, I no longer saw the love of my life. I saw a walking ATM, my future benefactor, because I knew that to survive to the end of this novel, I had to let her go and, more importantly, let myself off the hook. I woke up to find I had become the villain in a novel. The female CEO, my wife, hated my guts. All she wanted was to divorce me so she could be with her one true love. I happily signed the divorce papers, took half of her assets as my own, and said with a smile, "You go after your love, and I'll hold on to my money." To each their own. So, long story short, I was now the villain in a trashy CEO romance novel. I spent the better part of the day lying in a daze on a ridiculously large bed in a 2,000 square foot master suite, trying to wrap my head around it. It took me hours to finally accept my new reality. I started piecing together the plot of the novel. My name was Lucas. I had been obsessed with a woman named Olivia since we were kids, but she had always despised me. So, I, the original Lucas, had resorted to every dirty trick in the book to force her into marrying me. She only agreed because of pressure from her family. She never had a choice. Later, she and her old flame rekindled their romance, and she demanded a divorce. As compensation, Olivia offered me half of her entire fortune. But the original Lucas was madly in love with Olivia and refused to grant her a divorce. He pestered her endlessly, sabotaged her at every turn, and even framed her boyfriend. In the end, the character of Lucas met a miserable and mysterious death. The original guy wasn't just an idiot. He was a lunatic blinded by love, stupid beyond belief. So if I wanted to live a long and peaceful life, all I had to do was simple. When Olivia asked for a divorce, I would sign the papers and let her go. That evening, I sat at the dining table waiting for Olivia to get home from work for dinner. I had just checked my phone for the 10th time when she finally strolled in. She didn't even glance at the spread on the table, heading straight for the stairs. I couldn't be bothered to stop her. If she wanted to eat, she would. I picked up my fork and prepared to dig in. I speared a large piece of abalone with black truffle and popped it into my mouth. It was delicious. Olivia really had no idea how to enjoy life. We had a team of personal chefs, yet she insisted on ordering cheap takeout to her office every day. After I had my fill, I made my way slowly upstairs and ran right into Olivia, who had just stepped out of the shower. She was drying her hair, about to head into her office to work more. Wrapped in a bathrobe, her features were exquisite, and her skin was so pale it was practically luminous. I couldn't help but stare for a second longer. Olivia shot me an icy glare. "Lucas, control your eyes." I pursed my lips, staring back at her cold expression that looked like I owed her $1 billion. Now I finally understood what it meant to keep people at arm's length. But honestly, her Ice Queen act had zero effect on me now. The only thing that got my heart racing was money. I established a new motto for myself. Stay away from Olivia, cherish my assets. Olivia and I had been sleeping in separate rooms for a long time. We had absolutely no marital life to speak of. The original Lucas used to sneak into her room in the middle of the night to harass her, only to be kicked out every single time. His shamelessness was truly pathetic. The next day, I slept in, rolled out of bed in a fantastic mood, and headed straight to the mall for a shopping spree. I only bought expensive things, not even bothering to look at price tags unless they had at least 6 figures. Of course, I charged everything to Olivia's credit card. The only downside was that I couldn't even get close to the card's limit. It wasn't my fault. She was just too rich. Oh well, I just have to try again tomorrow. The original Lucas came from a well-off family too, but his parents favored his sister, leaving the entire family fortune to her. It looked like my future as a tycoon depended entirely on my own efforts and this impending divorce settlement. When I got home, a member of the house staff approached me and respectfully asked what I would like for lunch, so they could have it sent to Olivia at her office. That's when I remembered. The original Lucas made a point of sending her a special lunch every day. She never ate it, of course, just threw the entire thing in the trash. What a waste of food. On top of that, I was supposed to fawn over someone who couldn't stand the sight of me. Only a crazy person would do that. I waved my hand dismissively. Forget it. Don't make it anymore and stop the deliveries. Just after lunch, I got a call from Olivia. She told me there was a gala tonight and that I had to go with her. No matter how much she hated me, Olivia had to maintain appearances in public, playing the part of one half of a happy couple. As dusk settled, Olivia and I arrived at the gala. Someone greeted us with a smile and a joke. "Mr. Miller, Ms. Rivera, you two make such a handsome couple. Your children will be absolutely gorgeous." Olivia, holding my arm, remained completely expressionless, not even bothering to reply. I, however, chuckled and offered a few polite words, all while thinking to myself, Astra's children? Yeah, right? Dream on. Astra's for the entire evening. I was like her glorified assistant, standing by her side and making small talk until my face ached from smiling. I was running on pure acting ability with zero emotional investment. When the crowd finally thinned out, I grabbed a glass of juice to soothe my throat and try to shake out my aching legs. It was exhausting. I felt more dedicated than a professional actor. But the moment I thought about the massive fortune waiting for me after the divorce, my energy came flooding back. I glanced down at Olivia. In my eyes, she wasn't a CO anymore. She was a giant, walking, talking pile of cash. I wondered when we could finally file the papers. Just the thought of getting half of her net worth was enough to make me ecstatic. She was difficult to be around, but her generosity was an endearing quality. Thinking about that made her face seem a little more pleasant. Olivia noticed me staring and met my gaze, which I had carefully crafted to look deeply affectionate. Her brow furrowed in disgust. "Lucas, stop dreaming," she sneered. "Don't ever think for a second that I could fall in love with you. It's never going to happen." I rolled my eyes internally. "Asterisk, give me a break. You really think the world revolves around you?" Asterisk, the only thing I loved was money. The ultimate insult to my life's ambition would be for someone to say, "He's so poor. All he has is money." After the gala, Olivia and I were leaving the venue when I spotted a man in a white shirt standing not too far away. It was the male lead, Jerry. I quickly pulled back the fist I had instinctively started to raise. According to the original plot, the moment I saw Jerry, I was supposed to charge over and punch him, only to get slapped across the face by Olivia in front of everyone. There was no way I was getting slapped, especially not after the expensive facial I'd gotten that afternoon. Olivia and Jerry had met in college. Jerry came from a modest background, but he was handsome, in great shape, and had a sunny, optimistic personality. It was that resilient spirit that had captivated Olivia. Later, Olivia's mother, Jenny, found out about them and did everything she could to break them up. She even offered Jerry $2 million to disappear from her daughter's life. Jerry refused the money, but unable to bear Jenny's insults, he broke up with Olivia. If that had been me, I would have at least tried to negotiate. Add a couple of zeros, maybe start the bidding at $200 million. What was so great about the female lead, anyway? She had an icy personality, wasn't gentle or cute. Sure, she was easy on the eyes, but you can't pay the mortgage with a pretty face. Right now, Jerry was staring daggers at us, his eyes red and glistening with unshed tears. To be more accurate, his gaze was glued to Olivia, and seeing us standing together was clearly breaking his heart. "Don't worry, buddy," I thought, lighting a figurative candle for him. "You'll have her back soon enough." The deep bond between Olivia and me was a complete act for the public, totally devoid of any real emotion. Olivia's expression changed in an instant, and she rushed toward Jerry. But he simply turned his back and walked away. Watching them play out this dramatic scene, him walking away, her desperately chasing, I almost reached for a bag of popcorn. This novel was a romance, after all. All the sweet, dramatic moments belonged to the main couple. A villain like me was just part of the scenery. Olivia finally caught up to Jerry and grabbed his hand. He turned his head away, feigning indifference, refusing to look at her. She started explaining something frantically and before I knew it, they were wrapped in an embrace. In the end, they walked away hand in hand, leaving me standing there as if I were invisible. I had to admit, Olivia was truly, madly in love with Jerry. If I wasn't the one being cheated on, I might have even applauded. I was about to turn and hail a cab when my eyes met a cold, intense stare. I froze for a second before I realized who it was. Olivia's older sister, Victoria Rivera, the heir to the Rivera Group. She was famous for her icy demeanor, and right now, standing there without expression, her face looked like it was carved from cold marble. Seeing that cold, severe look, it suddenly occurred to me that the sister's permanent scowl might be genetic. I offered a polite greeting. Victoria. Victoria looked me up and down, her tone flat. Your wife just ran off with another man. You don't look very upset. Of course I wasn't upset. I was no longer the love-struck fool from before. All I wanted now was to divorce Olivia, take my half of the assets, and settle into a comfortable life of doing absolutely nothing. I lowered my head and let out a convincing sigh. What could being sad do? Victoria studied me in silence for a long moment before speaking in that same cold tone. Get in. I'll give you a ride. Since Olivia had already left, and it was hard to get a cab here, I had no choice but to accept. Thank you, Ms. Rivera. I appreciate it. The ride home was unnervingly silent. Neither of us said a word. When we pulled up to the house, Victoria actually got out and opened my door for me. I was about to thank her when a shadow fell over me. I looked up, and her face was just inches from mine. She was so close, I could see the individual curves of her eyelashes. I held my breath as my heart, for some reason, began to pound. Victoria was about 3 years older than Olivia, but she was far more mature, composed, and serious, which gave her an intimidating air that made people keep their distance. I had always instinctively done the same. A thought struck me. Asterisk, oh crap. She's not. Into me, is she? Asterisk, I racked my brain, but I couldn't remember any scene like this in the novel's plot. Just as my mind was racing, Victoria spoke softly. Get some rest. I quietly let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Did she really have to get that close just to say that? Well, thanks for the ride home, Victoria, I said with a nod, then turned and went inside. The next few days were peaceful enough. Olivia was busy with Jerry, and I was busy spending her money. I hit the malls during the day and auction houses at night, buying everything I could get my hands on and having it sent to the house. This went on until one evening, when Olivia came home from work and paused, noticing the remnants of my dinner on the table. In the past, the old Lucas would have waited up for her, no matter how late, so they could eat together. I licked a bit of stray caviar from the corner of my mouth. If you haven't eaten, just ask the kitchen to make you something. I'd probably be hungry again later myself, and would need a midnight snack anyway. With that, I stood up to head to the home theater and binge-watched some shows, The Perfect Into a Perfect Day. But Olivia suddenly spoke up. You've been buying a lot of things lately. I stopped in my tracks. Was she starting to get stingy? You think I'm spending too much? I asked, turning to face her. No, she said, her face a mask. Just don't leave your new things lying all over the place. We each had our own walk-in closet, right next to each other. She must have walked past mine and seen the pile of shopping bags I tossed on the floor. Olivia was a bit of a neat freak with obsessive-compulsive tendencies. She couldn't stand a mess. All right, I'll clean it up later, I said. I was about to head upstairs when I remembered something. Speaking of which, I said, turning back to her, could you stop leaving your socks everywhere? You left a pair right outside my door the other day. Olivia's face instantly darkened. Since when do you get to tell me what to do? Who do you think you are? Fine, whatever. Okay, you're right. You're the boss. I didn't feel like arguing, so I changed the subject. Anyway, I'm thinking of taking a trip to the Maldives in a few days. According to the novel's plot, Jenny would soon discover that Olivia was still seeing Jerry. Then she would come to me and demand that I do something about him. The original Lucas, driven mad by jealousy and encouraged by Jenny, would then try to destroy Jerry. But Jerry was the hero of the story. He had plot armor. Anyone who went up against him was destined to fail. I had no intention of fighting him. I just wanted to live a life of leisure. The best strategy was to make a run for it and hide out on a tropical island. Olivia didn't object. As usual, she couldn't care less about my plans, as long as it meant I was out of her sight. But just as I was lounging on a beach chair in the Maldives, soaking up the sun and enjoying the sea breeze, admiring the beautiful women walking by, my phone suddenly rang. It was Jenny, telling me to get back home immediately. I cursed Olivia under my breath. Asterisk, couldn't you have been more careful? Did you have to let your mother catch you? Asterisk, I hadn't had nearly enough of the beach and the scenery, but I had to book the next flight back. I had barely walked through the door when my phone rang. It was Olivia. Lucas, you know I've always loved Jerry, she said. Let's get a divorce. I pressed a hand to my chest to calm my racing heart. I was more excited now than I was when I first woke up in this world. I forced myself to sound calm. Okay. The agreement came out so quickly and cleanly that she went silent on the other end of the line. Fearing she hadn't heard me, I prompted her. So, do you have the papers ready? Olivia asked, surprised. You're agreeing to the divorce? What choice do I have? I sighed, my voice full of practiced melancholy. You don't love me. Olivia was quiet for a moment. I'll have my assistant bring the papers to the house. Roger that. A CEO's assistant is nothing if not efficient. Less than 30 minutes later, the divorce agreement was sitting in front of me. My heart pounded in my chest as my eyes scanned the settlement amount. I kept counting the zeros until my fingers started to cramp. It was an astronomical figure, more money than I could probably spend in a lifetime. I couldn't even imagine how one would go about blowing it all. I pinched myself hard. Ouch. Yep, not a dream. This was real. I quickly scrawled my name on the signature line, my hand trembling with excitement, and handed the document back to Olivia's assistant. Could you please ask your boss when we can go to the courthouse to make this official? The assistant stared at me for a few seconds, clearly baffled by my cheerful demeanor. He probably expected me to be weeping, or at least a little sad, not looking like I was about to pop a bottle of champagne. Still, he dutifully did his job and called Olivia. After hanging up, he informed me, Ms. Rivera has agreed. She's sending a car to pick you up now. Humming a cheerful tune, I went upstairs to change. When I came back downstairs, the assistant stared at me again. I probably looked younger, happier, and more handsome than I did on my actual wedding day. I shot him a wide grin. About to be a millionaire. Gotta look the part, right? Once in the car, Olivia gave me a long look. You seem to be in a good mood, she remarked dryly. I quickly wiped the massive grin off my face and turned to her. I never got any affection from you, so why can't I be happy about the money? But I had to hold back. The divorce wasn't final yet, and the money was still technically hers. I couldn't be too obvious, so I put on my best heartbroken expression. Are we really doing this? As expected, a look of disgust flashed across her face. It's happening, Olivia said coldly. It's not up for discussion. Perfect, that's settled then. A moment later, she asked, Is there anything you want to add to the agreement? I smiled and shook my head. Nope, I'm very satisfied. My good mood lasted for all of 10 minutes before we hit a massive traffic jam. Of all the times for the roads to be packed, I kept nagging the driver. Can you go any faster? We'll miss it if the courthouse closes. Olivia was giving me a very strange look. I quickly added a plausible excuse. The sooner we get this over with, the sooner we can both move on. You're so busy, I don't want to waste any more of your time. The traffic was at a complete standstill, and I was getting increasingly antsy. I finally just got out of the car and jogged up to the front of the line to see what was going on. Of course, the driver at the front was on his phone. I walked up and tapped on his window. Hey man, can you hang up? I'm in a real hurry to get divorced. It's an emergency, you know. The guy looked up at me. He'd probably seen his share of divorcing couples, but I was likely the first one he'd ever seen this desperate to get it done. When I got back to the car, Olivia was on the phone, a deep frown on her face. She looked upset. She hung up and told the driver, Change of plans. Don't go to the courthouse. Take us to the family estate. My good mood crashed and burned. Damn it. Olivia, if you back out now, I swear I'll go to your office and chop down that stupid money tree in the lobby. No, wait, calm down. I needed her to keep making money, so my share would be bigger. When we got to the Rivera estate, we learned that Jenny had fainted. The moment she heard Olivia was divorcing me, she passed out cold. Now, Her husband Arthur was standing over Olivia, yelling at her. I stood silently to the side, my eyes red as if I were about to burst into tears. In reality, I was pinching my own thigh until it was black and blue. Olivia's mind was made up. No one was going to talk her out of this divorce. And I was just as determined to get my half of her assets, so I had no choice but to keep up my heartbroken act. Finally, Olivia dropped to her knees right there in the entryway, hoping to force her parents to give in. It was a good idea, made even better by the fact that the sky suddenly darkened and a torrential downpour began. I had a chuckle. The heavens were on my side. A maid ran up to me. "Sir, Mrs. Rivera has asked you to go talk some sense into Ms. Olivia." I nodded with a grave expression. "I'm on it." 10 minutes later, I was sitting cross-legged on the top step, snacking on sunflower seeds and watching the woman kneel in the rain. The whole dramatic display was straight out of a soap opera. One of the maids couldn't stand it and tried to go out with an umbrella for Olivia, but I stopped her. "If she doesn't look miserable enough, they'll never give in," I explained. I needed her to play this part to the hilt so we could get this divorce over with. "Go get me a cup of tea," I ordered. The maid just stared, clearly thinking I was a completely different person now. Olivia was never in the best of health to begin with, so it wasn't long before she developed a fever from kneeling in the cold rain. She was a typical pampered princess, fragile enough to get sick from a little rain. The staff rushed her back to her room and frantically called for a doctor. I glanced at the thermometer. 100 degrees. Not fatal. I shooed the maids out of the room, and looking at Olivia's pale face as she rested against the headboard, I kindly poured her a glass of water. "If you really want this divorce to go through," I said, "you're going to have to up the ante." Olivia coughed, looking at me weakly. "What do you mean?" I offered a helpful suggestion. "Hunger strike." The trick worked like a charm. Watching their sick, beloved daughter refuse even a sip of water, Mr. and Mrs. Rivera were absolutely heartbroken. I was heartbroken too. Every day that money wasn't in my bank account was a day I was losing out on interest. In the end, her parents couldn't hold out against her and finally agreed to the divorce. Feeling guilty, Jenny pulled me aside and gave me an imperial green jade pendant. She had always been generous, frequently gifting me expensive jewelry and antiques. I immediately threw my arms around her and started wailing. "Mom, I don't want to leave you." What I really meant was, I don't want to leave all your expensive stuff. Maybe she could just adopt me. As I was heading downstairs, I ran into Victoria. She looked at me intently. "I thought you were madly in love with Olivia. Seeing her like this doesn't bother you at all?" I didn't have time to feel sorry for her. I was too busy feeling sorry for myself for not getting my bird's nest soup today. Besides, we were getting divorced. I was tired of playing the part of the lovesick fool. I just shrugged. Lovesickness isn't a terminal illness. I am cured. Victoria let out a soft, low laugh. I tensed up immediately. I had never seen her laugh before. Her character was barely mentioned in the novel, so I knew almost nothing about her. Just then, a commotion started outside. I went to see what was happening and found Jerry at the main gate, demanding to see Olivia. I'm not the kind of guy to stand in the way of true love, so I told the staff, "Let him in." Jerry looked at me. "Olivia and I have known each other for a long time, but I never interfered in your marriage after you were wed." I nodded. "Of course you didn't. He was the hero of this novel, blessed with good luck and favorable circumstances at every turn. I, on the other hand, was just the villain destined to be crushed by the plot no matter what I did. Olivia and I are getting a divorce," I added. Jerry looked shocked. "You're actually willing to do it?" It was almost funny. I'd have to be an idiot not to. "You're probably the only person on earth who would treat Olivia like she was the greatest treasure." I nodded. "Yep." Then I led Jerry upstairs to her room. But as we were going up, Jerry's foot slipped, and he tumbled backward. He cried out, and I instinctively reached for him, but I was too late. I could only watch as he rolled all the way down the stairs and landed in a heap at the bottom, lying motionless in a growing pool of blood. I froze, my right eye twitching uncontrollably. There is a scene in the novel where Lucas, deliberately pushed Jerry down the stairs, nearly killing him. But I hadn't touched him. Was this some kind of joke? Was the plot determined to frame me? At the hospital, Jerry was still in the ER. Olivia was a storm cloud of fury, her eyes shooting daggers that could have torn me to shreds. I was a classic case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. "Lucas, you better pray Jerry is okay," she seethed, "or I'll make you pay 1,000 times over." "Are you serious, Olivia?" I thought. "You've already forgotten who was bringing you water and medicine just a day ago." But then I remembered the horrific fate of my character in the novel, and a chill went down my spine. I instinctively shrank back into a corner and started mentally browsing for a sturdy coffin. "It wasn't me," I mumbled. Olivia glared. "Lucas, are you still trying to deny it?" I saw it. He didn't push him. A calm, cool voice cut through her anger. I turned to see Victoria standing there. My savior. She was like my own personal guardian angel. Just then, the door to the operating room opened and a doctor emerged. "He has a mild concussion and a fractured right leg. He'll need to stay for observation." Olivia peppered him with questions, completely forgetting I existed. When Jerry finally woke up, Olivia's first question was, "Did Lucas push you?" Jerry glanced over at me, then shook his head. "No, he didn't." I just lost my footing. I allowed a long sigh of relief. The plot of this story was getting weirder by the minute, but at least the hero had some integrity. If he had blamed me, I'd probably be ashes by now. I knew I had to stay far away from both of them. My life could be on the line if the plot decided to take another weird turn. The very next morning, Olivia and I went to finalize the divorce. The moment the final document was in my hand, tears streamed down my face. I was finally rich. I wiped them away and grinned at her. "I wish you all the best with your true love. I'll just be over here, enjoying my wealth." Before she could even react, I hopped in my new Maserati and sped off. The settlement from Olivia included several pieces of prime real-world estate. I chose a spacious penthouse apartment with a great view for myself, passing on the 10,000 square foot mansion. The thought of having to pay for a team of maids, gardeners, and cleaners out of my own pocket just didn't seem worth it. After the divorce, my life became one of pure, unadulterated luxury. The first thing I did every morning was check my banking app to see how much interest I'd earn overnight. Then I'd spend the rest of the day eating, drinking, and traveling without a care in the world. The only annoyance was my parents, who called to yell at me when they heard about the divorce, complaining about all the perks they would now lose. I wired them a large sum of money, and they quieted down immediately. Money can't solve everything, but it certainly makes life easier. After a trip to Bali, I heard a new high-end bar had opened downtown, so I decided to check it out. When you're rich, you have to enjoy it. I wasn't looking for company, so I just ordered a few drinks for myself. To my surprise, I ran into Victoria. It looked like this was her kind of place. She always seemed so cool and aloof, but apparently she knew how to unwind. She spotted me pretty quickly, so I went over to say hello. "Victoria." I figured it couldn't hurt to be on her good side. You never know when you might need a powerful ally. Victoria sat down next to me, a faint smile playing on her lips. "You seem to be doing well for yourself since the divorce." I just laughed. "I'm getting by." She seemed to be keeping to herself, just sipping her drink alone. Her tolerance for alcohol, however, was clearly not very high, because it wasn't long before she was drunk. It was getting late, so I stood up to leave, but she suddenly grabbed my hand. Her grip on my wrist was surprisingly strong, and she wouldn't let go. The men in the bar were starting to circle her like vultures, each one eager to be her knight in shining armor for the night. I had no choice but to get her out of there. When I went to pay the bill, I was stunned to hear the price of the wine she'd been drinking. $15,000 for a single bottle. I shot a glare at the drunk Victoria. Wasting money like that was a special talent. I gritted my teeth and paid the bill, my heart bleeding with every dollar. I didn't know where she lived, and I couldn't take her back to the Rivera estate this drunk. If the wrong person saw us, the rumors could get me killed. In this story, I was completely expendable. So I resigned myself to my fate and took her back to my apartment. If she hadn't defended me at the hospital, I would have just left her there. I carried her to the guest room, laid her on the bed, made sure she wouldn't roll off, and then went to my own room and slept soundly. The next morning, I was woken up by a combination of hunger and the delicious smell of cooking. But I didn't have a cook, so who was in my kitchen? I scrambled out of bed and rushed to find out. And there, standing in my kitchen, was Victoria. I never would have guessed she knew how to cook. She gave me a sideways glance. Go get washed up. Breakfast is ready. I did as I was told, taking the time to shave and make myself presentable. One look at the breakfast she'd prepared told me Victoria had class. Even the eggs were cooked to perfection. Not like Olivia, who lived on takeout. No wonder Olivia always had stomach problems. She deserved it. Suddenly, I remembered something important. I cleared my throat. Victoria. She looked up. Yes. I knew how to play dumb, but not when it came to money. About last night. Could you Venmo me for the $15,000 bottle of wine? Also, if you plan on going back there, give me a heads up so I can stay far away. Just as the words left my mouth, my phone buzzed. I looked down. A Venmo notification for $20,000. What was the extra $5,000 for? The extra $5,000 is for not leaving me there last night, she said simply. I laughed nervously. Of course. It's my duty to respect my elders. Victoria's eyes went cold. Who are you calling old? I immediately realized my mistake. You don't call a woman old unless you have a death wish. No. I backpedaled quickly. You're young and beautiful. Impossibly so. I'm the old one here. And this breakfast is absolutely delicious. That seemed to mollify her a bit. Being around her was like walking on eggshells around a tiger. Since I had nothing better to do, I eventually called her and asked if she could help me find a job, just something to kill time. She thought for a moment. As it happens, my secretary just went on maternity leave. You can fill in for her. The original Lucas was lazy and useless, but even he could handle fetching coffee and filing papers. I accepted immediately. It wasn't until I started that I discovered the catch. Olivia's office was on the same floor. And sure enough, I ran right into her. My luck was just the worst. Olivia looked at me with pure disgust. Lucas, we're divorced. Stop following me around like a lost puppy. To be fair, I couldn't really blame her. The old me had been shamelessly persistent when he was chasing her. But that was him, not me. I wasn't going to take the blame for his actions. You've got it wrong, I said calmly. I work here. Olivia sneered. You? Working? What can you possibly do besides spend money? Don't use this as an excuse to get close to me. I didn't bother to argue. Olivia, narcissism is a sickness. You should really get that checked out. She froze, stunned. The old Lucas would never have dared to talk to her like that. I didn't give her a second glance. I just turned and walked away, feeling 10 feet tall. It was probably the best I'd ever felt standing up to her. I had assumed being a secretary would be a cushy job where I could slack off and collect a paycheck. I was wrong. Victoria wasn't just a workaholic. She was a force of nature. I was so busy I barely had time to breathe, let alone check my phone. Maybe she noticed I was on the verge of collapse, because one evening she offered to treat me to a nice dinner. I immediately shredded the resignation letter I had been composing in my head. I could probably stick it out a little longer. After work, as Victoria and I were stepping out of the elevator, my foot slipped and I started to fall. In a flash, she reached out. Victoria grabbed my arm, saving me from a painful meeting with the floor. The moment our eyes met, my heart hammered against my ribs. And of course, at that exact moment, a cold voice cut in. Victoria. It was Olivia. She was glaring at me. Lucas, what are you trying to pull now? I rolled my eyes. I'm just trying to earn a living, you idiot. I steadied myself and turned to Victoria. Thank you. Olivia turned to her sister. Victoria, he's up to no good. Don't let him fool you. Victoria's expression was calm. Lucas is my secretary now. Please treat him with respect. Inside, I was cheering. Asterisk, you're amazing, Victoria. I definitely picked the right person to work for. Asterisk, Olivia frowned, about to say more, but Victoria simply took my hand and led me away. Olivia was left standing there, speechless. I glanced down at Victoria's hand holding mine and wondered, what's this all about? During dinner, Victoria suddenly asked, do you still love Olivia? I was busy dismantling a king crab. Don't talk about her. She's bad luck. You're ruining my appetite. Victoria laughed again. I really couldn't figure her out. At work, she was an absolute iceberg, and here she was laughing at me, bad-mouthing her own sister. It just didn't make sense. A few more days passed, and I started to get the hang of the job. It was busy, But Victoria was a stable boss, unlike Olivia, who would call you useless and tell you to get lost at a moment's notice. But the good times didn't last. One day, I got to my front door, and before I could even get my keys out, something hit me hard on the back of the head, and everything went black. My last thought before passing out was, asterisk, I need to move. The security in this neighborhood sucks. Asterisk, when I came to, I was suspended in midair. If I fell from this height, I'd be a puddle on the floor. The very thought made my whole body ache. I glanced to my side and saw Jerry tied up next to me. Okay, now I knew what ridiculously cliché plot point we were in. Don't kidnappers in these novels ever use their brains? Why kidnap her ex-husband? I was no threat to Olivia. In fact, she'd be thrilled if I disappeared. Was I some kind of buy one get one free deal? A short while later, Olivia arrived with the ransom. She was here for Jerry, of course. She didn't even look in my direction. The kidnapper was an old business rival of hers, out for revenge. Seriously? I thought. If you really wanted to get back at her, wouldn't it make more sense to kidnap her? Finally, the kidnapper laid out his terms with a sneer. Olivia had to choose. She could only save one of us. It was a classic move, designed to make her suffer by choosing between her past and her present. I really wanted to curse him out. This was playing out exactly as I'd expected. It was so cliché it was boring. Olivia chose Jerry without a moment's hesitation. I wasn't surprised. In fact, if she had chosen me, I would have thought I'd woken up in the wrong novel. Was this really how it was going to end? My life of luxury had just begun. If I'd known I was going to die this soon, I would have lived it up more at that bar. I should have bought the whole place around. I was filled with regret. The rope was cut, and I plummeted toward the ground. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the impact that would surely shatter every bone in my body. But the landing was surprisingly soft. I opened my eyes to find I had landed on a giant inflatable safety cushion. Victoria was kneeling beside me. Are you okay? Are you hurt? She had saved me. I grabbed her sleeve, sobbing. Victoria, I'll spend this life living it up, but I swear, in the next one, I'll work like a dog to repay you. As soon as the words were out of my mouth, the adrenaline wore off, and I passed out again. The next time I woke up, I was in a hospital bed, feeling completely drained. At least I was alive. This must be a sign that I was destined to be rich. But the moment I heard Olivia had also been injured and was in the room next door, I shot up in bed. I want to be discharged. I had to get away from her. If I got tangled up in her drama again, I was a dead man. Victoria walked in. The nurse tells me you want to check out. I nodded. I'm Phoenix. The problem wasn't my health. It was that being in the same hospital as Olivia was a major safety hazard. Who knew what kind of trouble she'd attract next? And I didn't want to be collateral damage. Victoria gently pushed me back down onto the bed. Lie down. Rest. Victoria, you have to listen to me, I pleaded. But she had saved my life. I couldn't justify her. So I stayed put, my fears simmering beneath the surface. I grabbed her arm. Then don't leave, I said. She just nodded and sat quietly by my bed. She didn't say much, but her presence was incredibly comforting. I slept for a while longer. When my test results came back normal, showing I was perfectly healthy, we processed my discharge papers. As we were leaving, Victoria asked me, Olivia is right next door. Do you want to go see her? See her? Not a chance. She almost got me killed. I shook my head emphatically. No. But as soon as we stepped out of the room, we ran right into Olivia and Jerry in the hallway. Apparently, Olivia had sustained some minor injuries chasing after the kidnapper. I instinctively ducked behind Victoria. Let's go, I urged her. She took my hand. Don't be afraid, she said. And just like that, I felt my courage return. Olivia sneered. Victoria, he's just a... Shut up, Victoria cut her off, her voice like ice. Seeing the look of pure, frustrated rage on Olivia's face made me feel immensely better. Victoria was incredible. She held my hand and led me right past them, all the way out of the hospital. I looked down at our intertwined fingers. I couldn't play dumb any longer. Victoria, I began, and she stopped walking. I lifted our joined hands and licked my lips. I don't mind you holding my hand, but well are you? Before I could finish, Victoria leaned in and kissed me. My brain short-circuited. I had absolutely no idea how to react. This was definitely not in the original script. When she pulled back, her eyes were blazing with an intensity that stunned me. My face was so hot you could have fried an egg on it, and I wanted nothing more than for the ground to swallow me whole. That was my first kiss. A corner of Victoria's mouth lifted into a smirk. How would you like to have Olivia call you brother-in-law from now on? I pictured it, and a laugh escaped me. I nodded enthusiastically. I would love that. And just like that, Victoria and I were officially a couple. What I did not expect was that while I was busy preparing to move in her mansion, Olivia would show up at my door. "Lucas, all you care about is money, right?" she said. "I'll give you $20 million. Lee, my sister." So she was here to offer me a bribe to break up. I was about to respond when a pair of arms wrapped around me from behind. I turned my head to see Victoria. She looked down at me, her gaze soft. "Lucas, I'll give you $200 million. Marry me." I immediately wrapped my arms around her and held on tight. It's not like I was ever going to consider Olivia's pathetic offer anyway. 20 million? Who did she think she was dealing with? So, Victoria asked again, "Will you marry me?" I looked at her earnestly. "I will." With that said, I turned to Olivia. "What are you staring at? Call me brother-in-law." Olivia's face was a mask of fury, but under Victoria's heavy gaze, she finally managed to force out the word. "Brother-in-law." I scooped Victoria up into my arms. "Let's go. We're going to the courthouse." Lucas transmigrates into a novel as a villain, married to a rich CEO. When he discovers divorcing her means half her fortune, he immediately abandons his obsessive act for a get-rich-quick scheme. This change attracts the CEO's powerful older sister, Victoria. When the CEO leaves Lucas for dead during a kidnapping, Victoria rescues him. Lucas finally gets his divorce settlement and then happily accepts Victoria's own marriage proposal, securing his wealth and triumphantly becoming the original heroine's new brother-in-law.